Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Tony Spinosa, uh, who has a brand new show coming out in hopefully in February, I believe. We're going to talk to him about it, called Singing Revolution. We're going to talk all about it in a little while, but without further ado, here is Mr. Tony Spinosa. Hey,
Hey,
Tony,
hey, Jeff.
how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on today.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Man, it's been such a long time.
It has.
It really has. And to think that I think the first time we worked together was in Seesaw, right? At
I think it was in Comac, and Rick Grossman was the director. You were the musical
yes.
director.
Yes.
Amy McGrath was the lead, from what I
Ex-
remember.
that's right. That's right. Well, I have a little surprise for you. Here is
Oh.
look at that. Amy just sent that to me today.
Oh, how funny.
It's just so incredible.
Wow.
It's what a time that was. What a time that was.
Yes.
And then after that, I think we might have done a few in the park shows and things.
Yeah.
But then when we really had gotten together was during a review that we put together,
That's right.
Tony's
Only
Tonight.
tonight. Yes.
Yeah, and that was an absolute joy. That
Yeah.
was an absolute joy. So Tony's Tonight led into Bright Lights of Broadway, and then soon after that was when I really hadn't spoken to you after that.
Uh-huh.
But what a career you have had,
Thank you.
absolutely unbelievable. Tell us your path. Tell us
You know,
about your path.
it's interesting because I started to draw out the timeline, and I'm
Yeah.
very lucky to have had such a wonderful career, sort of working my way up the ladder in
Hmm.
the musical theater. And it started with Long Island Theater, doing Broad Hollow shows and Gray
Right.
Wig shows and
Sure.
doing Seesaw and Comac, and
Right.
that was sort of my starting ground.
Yeah.
I went to Villanova University for 1 year studying liberal arts, and at the end of that year, I said to my parents, college really isn't the right thing for me. I really want to go to New York City and study acting, singing, and dancing and
Hmm.
pursue what I love. Well, they were a bit up in arms about it. And they said, oh, what do we do? I know. Let's call Father Al Stevenson at the Actors Chapel on 46th Street in Manhattan and see if he can talk some sense into Tony. Well, Al took the call. Father Al took the call, and he said, well, let me see. There's this new guy on Broadway with a hit show, a chorus line. It's Michael Bennett. Let me give Michael Bennett a call and see if he'll have lunch with me and Tony and talk
Right.
about showbiz. Well, that's exactly what happened.
Oh my
So
God.
me, Father Al, and Michael Bennett sat down for lunch. I was supposed to go down and start a contract with the Bush, the Busch Gardens
Yes.
in Virginia. I was supposed to host the Italian show that year. He
Okay.
was like, just call them, tell them you're not coming. I'm going to take you around to the dance teachers in New York and show you how to study, and then come back and audition for me in a year or two once you've actually studied.
Wow. Wow.
And that sort of set me off with really wonderful training in New York.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Michael passed away before I was able to audition for him for Chorus
Uh-huh.
Line,
Uh-huh.
but I did end up doing a lot of Chorus Line about 20 years later once I moved to California.
Right.
So,
Right.
so after studying in New York, I decided to move to Los Angeles to pursue musical theater there because it seemed like a better market, not as competitive a market for musical theater.
Right.
Of course,
Right.
LA is more about TV and film, but there was
Sure.
a theater market.
Yeah.
So I was able to do shows. I was immediately cast in Fame, the musical, which was the US premiere in Los Angeles. Went on to do Evita, many productions of A Chorus Line, and South Pacific,
Yeah.
Leader of the Pack with Sha Na.
Wow.
And then I was in a production of Sweet Charity in Santa Barbara, California, with Patty Colombo playing Charity. And she was also rehearsing Peter Pan, which was a scheduled national tour that was headed for Broadway.
Right.
And toward the very end of the run of Sweet Charity, she came up to me and said, Tony, we are losing our Italian pirate. Do you have any desire to go on a national tour that's headed to Broadway?
No kidding.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about being at the right place at the right time. I mean, that is
Wow.
literally what happened. And the next day they hired me to go on the national tour, and that gave me my Broadway debut.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
That is
really
amazing. So
an
today
amazing journey.
I find out a former student of mine was in the tour with you. Played, what did he play? I wrote it down. John, one
Uh-huh.
of the little boys, Mike LaVolpe,
Oh
who,
my gosh.
yeah, who saw one of the things that I had on Instagram about the show today,
Yeah.
and he wrote to me. He said, "Tony Spinosa, wait a minute, I know Tony Spinosa."
Yeah, we were on tour for 3 years, 2.5 years together. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Such a good kid. Such a good
Yeah.
kid. Look at that. He's no kid anymore. So then you went to Broadway with Peter Pan.
Correct. And that's basically what brought me back to New York City.
Okay.
And I did a subsequent tour of Peter Pan a couple of years later. So I did about
Right.
5 years of Peter Pan in total,
Right.
interspersed with other shows, a lot of
Sure.
chorus lines, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
South Pacific. And I even did a South Pacific at the Hollywood Bowl with Reba McEntire and Brian Stokes Mitchell, which I think you got a
Wow.
photo of later.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So things like that crossed my path while I was in LA. But coming back to New York, I decided to really dive into my directing career. And that's when things started to materialize, sort of working my way up the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I started to do a lot of events for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS.
Yeah.
A lot of their Easter Bonnet competition and
Right.
Gypsy of the Year competitions.
Right.
I directed several solo strips for Jerry Mitchell. There was a precursor events to the big Broadway Bears that happens each year.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened? I was directing for Village Light Opera. And this opportunity came up with the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union.
Okay.
It's called the Observership Program,
Okay.
where they bring in one young director or less experienced director to shadow a Broadway director on putting on a Broadway show, and to literally watch how that's done, just be a fly on the wall. And I had seen this production of La Cage aux Folles in London 2 years prior, and an email blast went out saying Terry Johnson is looking for an observer for La Cage, starring Douglas Hodge and Kelsey Grammer. And I was very familiar with the production, so I wrote him a really lovely letter about how moved I was by this version of La Cage, because it's a much more scaled down version than the regular La Cage.
Yep.
And how powerful I thought the piece became because of his direction.
Sure.
I was called in for an interview, and he hired me on the spot for the observership program.
Wow.
And then on the night before we opened, he sat me down and said, the London creative team has decided that he wanted me to take care of the show because he was heading back to London after opening night, and they needed a resident director.
Right.
So they hired me for resident director for the Broadway run, which was amazing.
Wow.
And during that time, my little piece of Broadway history that I'd love to be connected with is that Harvey Fierstein took over the role of Zaza, which Douglas Hodge won the Tony for. So 1 year in, Harvey Fierstein took over, and Harvey wrote the show 25 years ago, not even thinking he was going to be playing the role in his older years. And I actually got to put Harvey into his own show for the remainder of the run on Broadway.
My God, that is incredible. That is incredible. So as a resident director,
yes,
what are the responsibilities? Are you there every night watching and giving notes? And
basically, it's a position that was created in London. Because in West End theater, the stage manager takes care of the stage stuff. The resident director takes care of the actors. It's very divided there. Most times around a Broadway show, the production stage manager is in charge of the actors and running, putting rehearsals and tweaking the show at times. But in this case, Terry really wanted a separate eye on the show that could really pay attention to it and keep its integrity.
Right. That's really amazing. That's really amazing. And then so you're with the show the entire time through.
Yeah. Right.
And then were there any subsequent productions afterwards that,
Well,
tours?
the national tour went out, and of
Right.
course they like to save money on national tours. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
the production company, who will remain nameless,
Right.
who put the production together, they're like, "No, sorry, Tony, there's no job for you here."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it went out starring George Hamilton and Christopher Sieber, both of
Okay.
whom I adore.
Yeah.
And the first few cities were a little bit rough. And I got a call. I was actually on the morning of my birthday,
Uh-huh.
in December, and saying, "Tony, we need you to go out to St. Louis tomorrow and fix the show."
Wow.
So at that point, I had never met George before. I had worked with
Sure.
Christopher, but never George. And
Right.
I was scheduled to stay in St. Louis for 24 hours to work with George and Chris.
Okay.
And George Hamilton brought me into his dressing room and said, "You have too much information that I need. You're staying here for the rest of the week," which is
Wow.
actually what happened and started a very wonderful friendship with me and George.
That's incredible. And
Yeah.
kudos to him for having the nerve to say that to you
Yeah.
and
Right.
to help himself. Sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there was two things that I read, and I wasn't quite sure what they were. I wrote them down because I knew I was going to forget.
Mhm.
Explain to me, because I don't know, what is the Cringe Fest, and there was another, and Bad Music Fests.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is a very off Broadway
Okay.
organization.
Yeah.
New York Artists Unlimited, I believe, hosted those festivals, both of them.
Okay. Okay.
And it was one of my first off Broadway directing gigs in New York.
Right.
And the Bad Musicals Festival, I directed Charlie Chang and the Mysterious Salami, and I actually won the award for Best Production
Oh,
for that, which
that's
was funny.
phenomenal.
And the Cringe Fest that followed the next year, I directed "Is That a Spear in Your Pocket?", which was a combination of skits, and I won
Right.
the direction award again for that year.
Oh, that's so
And I got
funny.
mentioned by Liz Smith in her column on Page Six and things
Right.
like that. So it
Oh,
really started to ignite my directing career in New York.
that's really, really amazing. That's
Yeah.
really amazing. So now fast forward all this time, and tell us a little bit about Singing Revolution, because
Wow.
in Singing Revolution, you've written it, you're going to direct it,
Correct.
and you're producing this and putting this whole thing together. And I personally just think it's one of the most amazing things I've ever heard about, because the whole process of it is so current and so about
Timely.
today, timely. Yes. Tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've created things throughout my entire career, starting with
Sure.
Tony Tonight,
Right.
and I've done adaptations of musicals. I've done jukebox musicals, but I was really looking for an original story to tell. I love original stories, especially stories that are humanitarian, like
Yep.
Come From Away.
Yep.
And I happened to be on a vacation in the Baltic states, and I landed in Tallinn, Estonia, which
Oh,
was a country and a
right.
city that I had actually never heard of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I found out through touring the city that they went through this singing revolution. It's a coined phrase, singing revolution, in 1991,
Right.
which was within my lifetime. And no one that I talk to about it here in the United States even knows what Estonia is. They always say Astoria. No, the country, the Republic of Estonia in the
Yeah.
Baltics.
Yeah.
And the story fascinated me because as a culture, the Estonians sing. They actually teach kids to sing starting in the first grade. They teach them how to sight read, whether they can hold a tune or not. They
Right.
teach everyone in the country to sing. They collectively come together in big stadiums to sing together as a
Right.
culture. That's part of it.
Right.
And starting in 1987, they started this singing revolution because they were under the Soviet Union for 50 years illegally.
Right.
And they were finally in 1987 given freedom of speech by Gorbachev.
Mm-hmm.
And they took that as their key to open up the door to start singing about Estonian freedom and getting Estonians back. I mean, events that we didn't hear about in the States, one of them specifically, the Baltic chain, was a chain of 2 million people that spanned 400 miles linking arms from the capital of Tallinn to the capital of Latvia, Riga, down to the capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, singing in protest of this illegal pact that kept them tied to the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
Estonia did several of these big events that led them to their ended up leading them to their freedom, their independence as a country without one drop of bloodshed. It was all peaceful protests, tanks coming at them, and they would just stand there without any weapons, without any bats in their hands, without even any signs, just in solidarity, holding each other, singing toward tanks coming with them in protest, and they got their independence. This story fascinated me, and I said, this is a musical waiting to happen.
Incredible.
Over the past 5 years, I have met a lot of the people that are still alive that led the revolution. The Estonian government set up me having interviews with them in Tallinn, and I was able to speak to them about how did you do this prior to the internet, prior to cell phones? How did you assemble an event this large? And they explained how they went to book clubs and churches and handed out flyers, and they were so passionate about doing it, and so passionate about doing it with integrity, without violence, by singing. And this really captured my heart, and I thought this is a beautiful story to tell. Stories about revolution are often very popular, and that this was a singing revolution really, really, it just inspired me to a massive end. And I've written this musical now called Sing Revolution that we're hoping to have the debut in Los Angeles in February 2021. That's what we're gearing up for.
Wow. And so you wrote the music and the lyrics and the book as well?
Yeah, so I have a co-writer with the book, James Bearhart. He was wonderful because my first draft of the musical was coming out like a history lesson.
Okay.
And James helped me to rip it apart and turn it into a character-driven piece where you're really rooting for the hero. And he's an amazing writer, and I am so glad that he walked into my life during a playwriting class. And he approached me and said, if you ever need help writing this thing, call on me. And a year later, I did.
Wow.
I did write the music and the lyrics. James co-wrote the lyrics, and the concept was obviously mine. But I'm very proud of where we've gotten it to.
And was it 5 years, did you say?
That was 5 years ago in July. Yeah.
Wow.
And it takes not that long to write a full musical from scratch. You know? You know that.
Yeah, and here you are 5 years later, just waiting to and had it been done earlier, I don't think it would have been as timely.
Well, Jeff, that's what's really sort of mind-boggling right now, how resonant, how relevant the musical that I've written is today. It is so much about peaceful protests. We will get nowhere with violence. We will get nowhere with violence. And that's where this internal war that we're having right now in our country has to come to an end. And we need to find a way to reunite our country again. And I hope that message can come forth with Sing Revolution when we can get it on the stage again, which, you know, the COVID thing has put a little bit of a concern into the equation. But I'm a positive thinker, and I'm hoping we're going to be clear by February 2021. I'm still heading for that date.
Yeah, that's great because, and you know what? If it's not that date, it's going to be soon after that because the story has to be told, and it's just an amazing story. Just an amazing story. Well, Tony, you were so generous to send me a clip of Why don't you explain the clip and then I'll get it ready to show.
Great. So the clip you're going to see was filmed by Neil Haskell. Neil was a So You Think You Can Dance winner. He was also in Hamilton. He started to bring it on Broadway. He was in The Times Are A-Changin'. He's an amazing talent. And this is Neil Haskell singing Lift It Up, which is the opening number of Sing Revolution. And to set it up, the city of Tallinn, the very first night they were given freedom of speech, they started a spontaneous night song festival. Now, Estonia is only 1 million people. That's all there is in the whole country. And on this one night, 300,000 people came to sing together. And
Wow.
that's what this song represents, the country
That's
coming together to lift it up in song. So this is
amazing.
Neil Haskell singing Lift It Up from Singing Revolution, the musical.
Okay.
Can hear it rise from the Baltic Sea. I can feel it now coming over me, stirring inside and flooding like water, breaking the silence, tearing down borders. Join our voices with the it's in our blood and in our veins. Hear the message that we say. We won't run, we won't wait. Keep the anthem never raised. See the walls start to break. There's no time to hesitate. Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up, lift it up. We can sing our country free. Lift it up. We will show them all we can be. Inside, there's a dormant song. Though it gets drowned out, it is never gone. In every man and in every child, our independence carry for miles. Round the world it keeps ringing on. It's in our blood and in our veins. Hear the message that we say. We won't run, we won't wait. Keep the anthem never raised. See the walls start to break. There's no time to hesitate. Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up, lift it up. We can sing our country free. Lift it up, lift it up. We will show them all we can be. Lift it up, cut through all of the red of our past regrets and rise. Lift it up, let us see a new history and sing our country free. It's time to call for declaration. After all, we are the new nation. I'm patiently waiting for our time to make it. The point is we made it from the shore of the Baltic Sea with the long summer nights a week. Celebration in our history, finding energy out of the deep. So lift it up, sing it. So bring it on, bring it on. We're never gonna stop singing. We're never gonna stop, never gonna stop, never gonna stop singing. So bring it on, bring it on. We're never gonna stop singing. So lift it up, never gonna stop, lift it up.
So amazing. So amazing.
Thank you.
The music is so inspiring as the lyrics are as well, but you can't, it's so hard not to move when when the music is playing. It's great, Tony. Really terrific.
I chose a Europop style score for this show
Right.
because I really believe we need to inspire younger audiences to appreciate musical theater,
Yeah.
just as they're appreciating something like Hamilton
Yep.
and Dear Evan Hansen. And I felt going more toward a contemporary sound was really going to benefit us moving forward into the future of musical
Yeah.
theater.
Yeah.
That was a conscious choice.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, just so terrific, so
Thank
terrific.
you.
We're gonna
Thank
look for. We're really looking forward to it coming to New York.
Yep.
And you'll have to keep me posted in LA. What's going on with it, because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
we're gonna push it out on this side.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.